Part 1. Induction. Close your eyes. Listen. Not to anything in particular. Just listen. To the silence between sounds. To the space behind the quiet. In Japan, it is said that the dead do not always know they are dead. They linger, in the places they loved, in the sounds they cannot forget, drawn to the living, like moths to a candle flame. This is the story of a blind man, and a biwa, and a night that lasted 800 years. Let the music carry you. Part 2. The Temple of Amidaji. The town of Shimonoseki sits at the very tip of Honshu, where the inland sea narrows to a strait so swift and treacherous that the water seems almost alive. It was here, in the 12th century, that the final battle of the Genpei War was fought. The Battle of Dan no Ura. On one side, the Heike clan, the Taira, once the most powerful family in all of Japan, rulers of the court, masters of ceremony and culture and war. They had held power for a generation and believed they would hold it forever. On the other side, the Genji, the Minamoto, fierce, relentless, coming down from the north like a winter storm. The battle lasted one day. By the end of it, the Heike were destroyed, not defeated, destroyed. Their ships sunk, their warriors dead. And the child emperor Antoku, 7 years old, held in the arms of his grandmother, slipped beneath the waves of the strait. The women of the court followed him, one by one, into the cold water, their silk robes spreading around them like flowers. 800 souls, gone into the sea in a single afternoon. The fishermen of the region said, for generations afterward, that on certain nights, the crabs that came up in their nets had faces, the faces of Heike warriors, still wearing their expressions of fury and despair. A temple was built on the shore, Amidaji, to pray for the dead, to give them rest, to help them let go. But the dead are not always so easily comforted. Part 3. Hoichi. At the time of this story, the head priest of Amidaji had in his care a young blind monk named Hoichi. Hoichi had been blind since childhood. He did not remember sight. He had never missed it. Exactly. Because you cannot miss what you have never known. But he had, from the very beginning, heard everything. Every sound, every tone, every shift in the quality of silence. The world had come to him through his ears in a richness and detail that sighted people rarely experienced. And he had channeled all of that into music. He played the biwa, a lute-like instrument, 4 strings, a body shaped like a pear, a sound that could be delicate as water or fierce as a storm depending on how the player chose to strike it. Hoichi played it, unlike anyone in living memory. He had a gift that went beyond technique. When he played, something happened to the people who listened. They forgot where they were. They forgot who they were. They felt things they had no words for. Old griefs rose up and were somehow released. Old joys returned, briefly, and were felt more purely than they had been at the time. His specialty was the tale of the Heike. Heike Monogatari, the great epic poem of the rise and fall of the Taira clan. Its opening words known by every Japanese person. The sound of the Gion Shoja bells echoes the impermanence of all things. Hoichi had memorized every chapter, every verse, every battle, every death, every moment of beauty and loss. When he performed it, people wept. Not from sadness exactly, from something larger, from being reminded that everything passes, that beauty is real even though it ends, that the dead were once as alive as we are. The priest loved Hoichi like a son. He worried about him. Hoichi was gentle and unworldly, absorbed in his music, not well suited to the practical difficulties of life. The priest made sure he was fed, made sure he was warm, tried, with limited success, to make sure he stayed out of trouble. But trouble has a way of finding those who are not looking for it. Part 4. The First Night. It was summer, the kind of summer night when the air is warm and heavy, and the sound of insects fills every silence. Hoichi was sitting alone on the veranda of the temple. The priest was away, visiting a parishioner. The other monks were asleep. Hoichi was playing, not performing, not practicing, just playing. The way a person sometimes speaks aloud when they are alone, for the pleasure of the sound, for the company of the music. He was playing a passage from the tale of the Heike, the fall of the Taira, the ships on the water, the child emperor, the women in their silk robes, the cold, dark water of Dan no Ura. He finished. The last note faded, and in the silence that followed, he heard footsteps, heavy footsteps, deliberate, moving across the gravel of the temple garden with the particular sound of armored feet. They stopped in front of him. A voice spoke. It was a deep voice, formal, courtly, using the ancient honorific language of the aristocracy, a way of speaking that belonged to another century. "I have been sent," the voice said, "by my lord. He has heard of your skill with the biwa. He wishes you to perform the tale of the Heike for his household. Will you come?" Hoichi was a gentle and obedient person. He was also, it must be said, not a suspicious one. He heard a voice of authority. He assumed it came from a person of authority. "I would be honored," he said. A hand closed around his arm. Large, very strong, the grip of a warrior. And Hoichi was led, away from the temple, into the night. Part 5. The Performance. He was led for a long time, through streets he thought he recognized, and then through streets he did not recognize at all. Finally, a gate, the sound of it opening, a courtyard, his feet on stone, the sound of many people, breathing, around him, more people than he could count, hundreds, perhaps, all silent, all waiting. He was led to a cushion. He sat. He settled his biwa across his lap. And then, a voice, a woman's voice, high and clear and carrying an authority that silenced everything around it. "Begin," she said. And Hoichi began. He played the opening, the bells of Gion Shoja, the impermanence of all things. He felt, immediately, that something was different about this audience. They listened the way no living audience had ever listened to him, with a totality of attention that he could feel, physically, like pressure in the air. Not a breath, not a movement, not a sound, just listening. As if this music was the most important thing in the world to them, as if they had been waiting for it for a very long time. He played the rise of the Taira, their glory, their power, their beauty. He could feel, around him, a kind of collective exhale, a recognition. He played the battles, the slow, grinding loss of power, and around him, the silence deepened into something that had weight and texture. He played Dan no Ura, the ships, the arrows, the screaming, the child emperor, small and bewildered, being carried toward the water. And from the darkness around him, he heard weeping. Not ordinary weeping, something deeper, more ancient, like the sound of grief that has been held for a very long time, finally finding its way out. He played the end. The women, the water, the silence. When the last note faded, the silence lasted a long time. Then the woman's voice again. "You will come again tomorrow night," she said, "and the night after. You will complete the full tale." "Yes," Hoichi said. He was led back, through the gate, through the streets, to the temple. He slept and dreamed of water. Part 6. The Second Night and the Discovery. The second night, the same. The footsteps on the gravel, the voice, the long walk through the dark, the vast, silent audience, the performance, the weeping. Hoichi played deeper than he had ever played. The music seemed to come through him rather than from him, as if the story itself was using him as its instrument. He returned before dawn. He slept. The priest noticed that Hoichi looked different, tired in a way that sleep didn't seem to fix, drawn, as if something was pulling at him from a distance. He asked Hoichi where he had been going at night. Hoichi, in his gentle, obedient way, said he had been performing for a noble household. He didn't think to say more than that. The priest was troubled. He said nothing yet. But that night, he sent 2 of the younger monks to follow Hoichi and see where he went. The monks followed him out of the temple. They saw him walk into the temple graveyard. They saw him sit down among the graves of the Heike dead. And they saw him play, alone, in the dark, among the graves, playing the tale of the Heike to no one that they could see. His face, in the moonlight, was transported, somewhere else entirely. They ran back to wake the priest. Part 7. The Priest's Fear. The priest sat with the monks for a long time after they told him. He was not a man given to panic. He had served at Amidaji for 30 years. He knew the stories of the Heike dead. He knew what they were capable of. He knew, with a cold certainty, what was happening to Hoichi. The dead had found him. His music, his extraordinary, impossible music, had reached them where they rested, or did not rest, and they had called him to them, night after night, each night drawing a little more of his living warmth into their cold world. If it continued, Hoichi would not survive, not through violence. The dead don't need violence. They simply take, slowly, gently, a little more each night, until there is nothing left. The priest acted quickly. He called for ink and brushes, and he spent the rest of the night writing. He wrote the sutras, the sacred Buddhist texts, on every surface of Hoichi's body, his face, his neck, his chest and back and arms and legs, every inch of skin covered in the words of the Dharma, dense and careful and complete. It took hours. When he was done, he woke Hoichi gently. He explained, as clearly and calmly as he could, what was happening, what the monks had seen, what he believed, what he had done. Hoichi listened without speaking, his face still. "Tonight," the priest said, "they will come for you again. You must not go with them. But more importantly, you must not speak, not a single word, not a sound. The sutras on your body will make you invisible to them. If you are silent, if you speak, if you make any sound at all, they will know you are there. And I cannot protect you from what will follow." Hoichi nodded. "Do you understand?" the priest asked. "Yes," Hoichi said quietly. "Whatever you hear, whatever you feel, you must be silent as the dead." The priest was called away that evening, unavoidably, to perform rites for a dying parishioner across town. Before he left, he repeated his instructions to Hoichi one final time. Hoichi sat on the veranda and waited. Part 8. The Third Night. The footsteps came at midnight, heavy, deliberate, armored, moving across the gravel with that sound that belonged to another century. They stopped in front of him. The voice spoke. "Hoichi." Silence. The voice again. Closer now. "Hoichi, it is time to come." Silence. He could feel the presence, enormous, just in front of him. The air where it stood was colder than the surrounding night. He could hear, or perhaps feel, something like breathing that was not quite breathing. "Hoichi." Silence. A long pause. The presence moved. He felt it circle him slowly, looking. Then, a sound of confusion, of frustration, and then, the voice again, and now it sounded different, less certain. "I cannot find Hoichi," it said, as if speaking to itself. "There is nothing here, only ears." A pause. "I will take the ears as proof that I searched." What happened next? Hoichi did not entirely understand until afterward. A sensation, sharp and cold, on both sides of his head. And then, the footsteps retreating. Back across the gravel, through the gate, away. And silence. Hoichi sat very still. He was shaking. He could feel warmth running down both sides of his face. He reached up. His ears were gone. Part 9. The Morning. The priest returned before dawn. He found Hoichi on the veranda, sitting perfectly still, his face and neck covered in blood that had dried to black in the darkness. He cried out. He ran to him. He called for the other monks. Hoichi was alive, conscious, remarkably calm. While the monks brought water and cloth, while the priest's hands worked quickly and carefully, Hoichi spoke. He told what had happened, his voice steady, precise. The priest listened, and when Hoichi finished, the priest was quiet for a long time. "It is my fault," he said finally. His voice was not steady. "When I wrote the sutras, I forgot your ears. I covered every part of you, and I forgot your ears. They could not see you, but they could see your ears. And they took them." Hoichi said nothing. "Can you forgive me?" the priest asked. A long silence. "There is nothing to forgive," Hoichi said. "You saved my life. The cost was 2 ears. I did not use them to see. I used them to listen, and I can still listen." He paused. "Can I still play?" "Yes," the priest said. "Your hands are unharmed." "Then it is enough." Part 10. What Remained. Hoichi recovered, his wounds healed. He was left with 2 smooth scars, one on each side of his head, where his ears had been, and he played. If anything, he played better than before. Something had happened to him in those 3 nights among the dead. Something had opened. Some understanding of grief, of loss, of the way beauty persists even after everything else is gone. His performances of the tale of the Heike became legendary. People traveled from every part of Japan to hear him. Lords and priests and ordinary farmers and fishermen, all sitting together, all listening, and all in the end weeping. Not from sadness, from that larger thing, that reminder. He became known as Miminashi Hoichi, Hoichi the Earless. He lived to an old age. He played until his hands could no longer hold the biwa. And on the night he died, those who were with him said that they heard, very faintly, coming from somewhere they could not identify, the sound of a biwa, playing the opening of the tale of the Heike, the bells of Gion Shoja, the impermanence of all things. And then, silence. Part 11. The Strait. The Strait of Dan no Ura is still there, still swift, still cold, still treacherous. The water still moves in ways that suggest something beneath its surface. And in the temple of Amidaji, the graves of the Heike dead are still tended, flowers placed, incense burned, sutras spoken. The fishermen no longer bring up crabs with human faces. Or if they do, they don't speak of it. On certain summer nights, when the air is warm and heavy and the insects fill the silence, people walking near the old graveyard sometimes stop. They think they hear something, very faint, coming from somewhere they cannot identify. A biwa, 4 strings, a sound like water, playing something very old, very beautiful, very sad. They stand still for a moment, listening. Then the sound fades, and there is only the night, and the insects, and the distant sound of the sea. Part 12. Outro. The story is over now, but the music is still there, in the silence between sounds, in the space behind the quiet. Listen. Can you hear it? Sleep now. Let it carry you. Shh.